Welcome to Mindful Drawing. I'm Robert, and I'll be your guide on this meditative practice that enters into a space of openness and awareness through the act of drawing. These exercises use our body, our breath, our physical presence as a guide or an entrance into a more open mental space through that motion, through the action of drawing a line, of making a shape, of moving the pen or pencil across the page, letting those sync with our rhythms to bring the action to the foreground of our attention, to bring mindfulness to how we might create on a page there by drawing a few lines, but also to let that foregrounded action push out other distractions, to let it release any energy or feelings we have there onto the paper, and let that space that comes behind it, that openness, that emptiness, just fill out, open up some space, develop a new territory, some of it expressed onto the page, some of it released from within. In this week's exercise, I thought I'd take a little inspiration from my growing up from central Illinois area. A lot of fields, a lot of demarcated land, gridded out, parceled, a tapestry of farm work, homesteads, small towns. Every year, a few times, I fly over it, get a chance to take it in, and I'm always fascinated just to watch it unfold beneath the windows of the plane, and thought that might be a place where we could begin with the drawing. If you don't have this experience, you haven't done a lot of flying over the Midwest, don't worry, we're just going to take a territory, a rectangle or something, divide it into a few pieces, and then begin to project some ideas into each one, a little canvas of frames, shapes and figures moving around. Grab a pen or pencil, something you'd like to draw with, a pad of paper, and let's draw together. It came to mind in flying a few times recently, and so I thought maybe playing with a bit of a subdivision of the page, that grid, and a few different things that can happen around that division in the landscape. Warm-up wise, just maybe a quick thought that we might work with things that divide lines, and they can be horizontal or vertical, perpendicular, or at any angle that you like on the page. Just draw a few and see how they divide the page for the warm-up. See how the hand is moving this morning and the arm, and start to get it into some balance or place of comfort or control. And right now, just break things up a little bit with a kind of a grid. We get some of these little roads there as well. As I said, any space you could go at any kind of angle as a way of dividing through the space. I think I'll work with a little perpendicular and parallel condition when we go to the larger exercise. And beyond the lines dividing and finding kind of a movement or flow with the hand, we can also find different things in these spaces. Perhaps a little lake figure bound within, a little hill figure bound within, perhaps the soft, bumpy edge of a field, maybe a city block or a sidewalk, whatever comes to mind as you think through flying over somewhere that has a bit of an imposed subdivision or grid to it. I think one thing we'll probably use a lot in the exercise is some kind of light toning or hatching, working with lines that layer up to develop difference between places. Those could be the lines of the tractor of the Midwest, or perhaps just some edges to give darker areas and lighter areas. But it would be nothing new in a technique, mostly 2D and just playing with the division here on the page. As we establish our space and presence, again, giving a little warm up to the fingers, give them a little wiggle so they're well engaged, give those nerves a chance to activate and send some signals to the brain, our mind able to pay attention to the reading of those signals, the impulses and reactions lighting things up, hopefully getting things moving in the mind. Take a couple of breaths to straighten out the spine and the shoulders. Maybe just a little movement side to side, a little roll back and forth. Find any kinks and just activate them so they're present and start to warm up, to drift to the background. As I engage with the open page, I think the first thing I'll do is define a frame. Separate myself from the edges of the paper by just giving a shape to it. It could be square, rectangular, tall, narrow, anything here, just a way to mark out some of the space, like a photograph, a window in there into the frame. Chance to break up that emptiness and give us a place to work. And we'll do a couple of divisions of this page, maybe just keep it simple with one line in two different directions. Looking at the rectangle you've made and choosing a place along it to begin working from one edge, slowly across to the other. Again, perpendicular, horizontal, vertical, angled, anything that feels right to you. Just cutting across that space, maybe giving it a little offset in thickness, cutting across it again, inspired by that bird's eye or aerial view of a landscape, a road, something traveling there through the space from one side to another. You can begin to work over it a few times, fill in the space, give it some definition of contour. This chance to feel the hand moving in a direction, to bring some practice and attention to that hand, or the fingers on the page, or we're able to hold them above and maintain motion. A challenging skill to the act of drawing, to the position we may be in. Eventually may be a good discipline to have, but it's just something to practice with our attention, disengaging everything but the tool from the page there, seeing how that changes how we draw. A little more wobble, perhaps. The traces of ink or graphite grip, the new lines, drifting them here and there, flowing a little more organically between the boundaries. Well marking this directionality, traveled top to bottom, left to right, wherever you're at now. And as we'll transition to a crossing, dividing through this initial separation, we can bring our attention into our breathing and our breath to find that more expansive space of oxygenation, slowness, synchronicity between our internal tempos and this external action. So again, anywhere on the page, in a way that will cross the lines that you already made, perpendicular or at any angle. But this time we'll take a breath to establish our starting position and let it out as we begin to draw across that territory. Depending on the size of paper and the speed of your movement, you may need a few more breaths to cross the whole area. We'll work into that tempo, following the same pattern as before. That breath in to establish, and on the out breath, the beginning of the journey. Bringing some awareness to your own space, your own motion to drawing, can you let one breath exhale across the page? Just start the journey. Either it's just the space we're in, the distance and speed we're moving. Neither is the goal. Breathing in at the beginning and relaxing into the rhythm of the breath along the journey. You may slow it down a lot to bring that attention to the pen in the hand again, or move at a speed that feels comfortable, aligned with the breath, aligned with the dexterity of your own action in drawing. And being open to each recycling of the breath, recycling of the motion, is also a chance for being present, perhaps taking a few cycles without action to allow the new re-engagement, more presence in the attention. It's good to take little breaks, to take notice of where we are, what we are doing and how we are doing it, to remember that we are here. Engaged in something present. And see into that space. The practice of these exercises, seeing into that presence, developing exercises of the breath that help us enter into a few moments, perhaps more intentional awareness to our presence, that we can bring to any action or interaction when we need it. Nice flag developing here. Once these two streams, two roads have crossed, in some way there should be 4 quadrants or spaces on that paper. You can continue to divide. I think I'll begin to look into a little story in each quadrant. Here in the larger one, perhaps more organic body, something like a lake with undulating edges, cuts and coves, working around to mark out that new space. A few journeys around its perimeter to trace the initial walk of the pen or pencil, to bring thickness to the edge and the contour, softening it or densifying it some places. Transition from one space to another around a thickened flow of lines. Something like a contour, but freer to cross, to cut in and out for now, to merge and diverge. with the idea of contours and that even rhythm found through the breath. You can begin to trace gradually inward or outward from the shape, moving a bit more smoothly, a bit more slowly around the edges, keeping just a little bit of distance as it expands from that initial shape into the space between. And on this longer journey of the pen or pencil, can you bring some new attention to the breath as it is drifted back into its support role, bringing oxygen in and out. Watch it for a little while on the drawing. Are the breaths slow and steady? Is there a holding or tightening? If there is, can you release it with that awareness? Does the pen move differently on the in-breath or the out-breath? As lines may approach others, either inwards towards themselves or outwards towards the divisions crossing the page, the space between them may expand into more open territory or compress as it squishes towards the edge. A gentle pace in or a rapid extension, hill forming up against that artificial division, the road cut through the landscape. The space within or between filled out a little bit with shape. If you're still working in that territory, feel free to continue, or if you've filled the space, you can always add more layers, more lines. With each of these, each one a new chance, so move at your own pace. I'm just going to move to the next quadrant. Work a little with the offset again, the shape of the edges defined loosely by the road, a little wobble of the edge of the grass, a little wobble at the edge of the frame, a few layers retracing, watching, feeling the hand's presence. Can you perhaps move the grip of the pen or pencil a little further up? Extend the instrument a little further from the fingertips, just to loosen that control, to work more like a brush, to distance the hand more from the page, and let the muscles engage with that new sensation, new tension, the pressure from the lever, extension outwards from the body. Here, after a few rounds establishing perimeter, I'm going to begin to fill the empty space with a sequence of lines painted roughly evenly next to each other, generally in the same direction, but at a distance, detached further from the fingertips, extended further out from the arm the shoulder, taking on more of their own character as the pen, paper have friction, drag along as the arm makes fine adjustments in close that have small ripples far away. A sequence of parallel lines providing tone and depth, and opening up space for reflection, for looking inward as the action becomes repetitive but requires the attention of motor skills, the attention of the eye, the mind present with the technique and the action, open in the background for whatever else may drift by, and perhaps that open in the background of the mind as the movement and the action draw the foreground can empty out a little bit. Become a space of just this painting of lines. And if the territory fills, you've reached the end or limit of your boundaries, you can move to a new space. Begin again with something new, a shape, field of trees, dots, telephone poles, streaks of lines, anything that engages with the territories divided there on the page. Keeping that awareness on the hand, keeping that attention on how you hold the pen or pencil, how that engages with the fingertips, how that activates the joints from the knuckles to the wrist, up through the elbow and the shoulder. How the motion and friction of the pen or pencil reverberates both in the mark as it jumps around between fibers and in your arm, feeling those vibrations move upwards. For me here, drawing some little trees from up above, that aerial view, blobby dots, these made by people in a grid, some kind of orchard or windbreak in the landscape. A new way of filling out territory, dividing with regularity, something natural. Just drawing into it for a few minutes of quiet reflection and creativity to see where it might take you. New fields, new tones or hatches, new shapes or figures. What's around you? What sounds enter in that have been there in the background, bring you into the present space? What smells are in the air? What sensations on the feet, hands, seat? Just the things there present, supporting us, but easily let go into the background. And take a few final breaths if you have a few moments, perhaps a chance to complete the exercise by reinforcing the original framing, bringing new definition to that edge, drawing a few deliberate lines just to mark an exiting of the exercise, to extend that boundary and bring closure to that world on the page. And with those marks completed, give yourself a few good breaths to stretch everything back out. Maybe open up the arms a little bit. Open up the back and the chest with a flex in and out. Give a good roll up and a good release as you prepare for the rest of your day. I'd like to thank you for joining, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up below. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and maybe a little bit about what kind of tapestry unfolded in your divided landscape. Please share with your friends if you enjoy these practices. There's many episodes to go back through and explore about techniques, about ways of connecting with our breath and our action, developing mindfulness through a more physical practice, maybe a little different meditation than something more internal or about the mind. I hope that going through some of these exercises can bring a little relaxation and creativity to your day. So wherever that takes you, I hope it's good. Thank you for joining, and draw well. Bye.